Episode number 18 here of the Scholastic Sit Down has arrived in playoff style. We have completed the regular season across the state. We've got state playoffs that we'll discuss later on throughout these podcasts. But first off, the SHL playoffs have arrived as we welcome you in here on the SHL Network. Dylan Ward alongside me. My name is Luke Jordan. We'll also get to discuss a lot of the out of SHL playoff scenarios as well. If I'm sounding a little bit congested today, just on the home stretch of a bit of a cold, so we're fighting it off. And Dylan, I'm hoping I didn't give you anything when we did our little state reveal show on Sunday. You feeling good over there?
Yeah, I'm feeling fine. I'm feeling
Good.
fine. Just a little bit just tired from calling so
That's
many
fair.
hockey games and getting ready to just kick it up another notch here with the playoffs. I'm really looking forward to this weekend.
So we will talk about some of the past scores over this week that led us to this point. Gonna pretty quickly talk about each one, considering we're now past the regular season point, but we gotta highlight some of the great games we saw in the final week. And let's start on Wednesday. We had three games here on January 28th. Going down the line, it was GBN GBS. That was the rubber match. That was on Marquee Sports Network, a huge game, and it did not disappoint. It was a 4-3 final. Glenbrook South with a huge overtime winner from Blake Hoffer, who just walked into the zone and rifled one past what seemed like an invincible Logan Spiegel, but not that time around, as South ends up losing the big game in November, but then they proceed to run back and take the following two as they win the season series here in the 2025-2026 season. The other two, Loyola and Carmel. Loyola took care of business. They almost let up, though. They had a 4-1 lead after the first, then goals back to back from Ryan DiNapoli. Were able to make this a 4-3 game. In the end, though, a final of 7-4. Loyola runs away with it with yet another great third period, but not without me tipping my cap to Ryan DiNapoli with a 4-goal game for the Corsairs. And lastly, Lake Forest is on the road at St. Ignatius. That didn't affect them at all down in Chicago. A 2-0 victory for the Scouts, led by, what do you know, another great goaltending performance. Logan Marsh, a 23 save shutout, as that would do it on our Wednesday there. Dylan, some crazy stats coming from this day.
Yeah, no kidding. First of all, Glenbrook South wins the season series, as you mentioned. And it's something that we talked about on the podcast earlier this season. Would you
Yep.
rather win the big game and lose the next two? Funny enough, I called some games with Zach Freeman, former Glenbrook South Titan and current single season SHL points champion. And he said he would rather win the big game and lose the next two. So that just goes to show you how meaningful that game in November is. But for the Titans, they do get some revenge, and in that moment, it feels good for them. Loyola beating Carmel. I mean, Ryan DiNapoli, 4 goal game. I don't think that might be the first 4 goal game we've seen from an
I think
SHLer
as
this
far as I
season.
can recall, absolutely
Yeah.
this season.
Yeah, so that's really impressive. And then how about this win for the Lake Forest Scouts? 2-0 over St. Ignatius. Logan Marsh, who we had on last week, stays red hot. And, Luke, this propelled the Scouts into finishing above the Wolfpack in the SHL regular season
Yeah.
standings. This win was a big part of that.
Going down the line here, we had two games on Friday, starting off with Lake Forest taking on New Trier, a team that already had a 2-0 season series lead on the Trevians, trying to pull off the sweep, and the only sweep by a team this season and in God knows how many years. But boy, oh boy, did they do that. They jumped out to an early 2-0 lead in front of a packed audience from both sides at North Shore Ice Arena. And from then on, they just kind of worked off of that. Even though New Trier headed into the break, was able to tie things up at two. George Knight, Jack Woolabin each getting on the board. But that third period, and once again, a rare third period collapse here for New Trier. They did it on Sunday against Loyola and Lake Forest with goals from Preston Lee and Tommy Esplin, and then the empty netter by Carter Savage. The Scouts with a sweeping of the Trevians after last year in the SHL playoffs. It was New Trier doing otherwise. The other game on Friday was also a very meaningful one in front of a very packed Addison Square Garden per se, as they hosted their true senior night. They were supposed to play senior night a week back, but St. Ignatius could not confirm to play because their school was canceled for the day, all that nonsense. So This became the senior night with even more storylines added onto it. Evan Poulikitis, Ben Stein against their former club.
Hmm.
They take care of it. A 5-2 victory. They jumped out early, up 3-0 after O'Leary, Brown, Fafinski all getting on the board as a part of a great balanced attack for this York Dukes team, and that would eventually be enough. The senior, Oscar Fish, goes in for York and gets the win. So the backup getting a nod there, and he earns the victory. And that was your Friday, Dylan.
Yeah, and one thing that stands out to me, of course, is Lake Forest Nutrien. First of all, I wasn't there in the building, but looking at the broadcast, how about the student turnout from both schools?
Incredible.
Unbelievable. The atmosphere must have been just nuts in that building, and especially with uh, you know, the broadcast being shown up on the Jumbotron. That's such a
Yeah,
cool feature, and
that
that
was
was
really cool.
your first time seeing that in person, and I'm sure for the such a great turnout fan wise. That was a really cool thing for them to experience. And then for York, a big win on senior night, just further cementing their spot. At this point, GBN had already been confirmed into the 8 seed, so the game did not matter for them per se, but either way, York comes away with the victory.
And then going into Saturday, York would play again. We'll talk about that in a moment. But Loyola and Glenbrook South would face off on this Saturday. And who knows, they might play each other again here. But anyway, their regular season meeting Loyola with a 3-1 victory with Nick Thomas scoring 2 goals to tie the lone goal for the Titans. It would not be enough. The Ramblers come away with that one. And then we have 13 total goals in the next one for our highest scoring game. It's the first one that me or Dylan have gotten right in ages. I said York Carmel just
Congratulations.
because the previous two were pretty high scoring, and I got that here. So for those following that high scoring matchup, he's now got three. I've got 2.5. We'll bring that up later on. But anyway, a whole lot of names on this score sheet, and York just firing on all cylinders. How about that 5-0 second period and going down the line here real quick? Two players on York with 3 points, two with two, and then nearly the entire rest of the team at least finding one. They outshoot the Corsairs in this one 58-27, and that was our second to last day of the regular season right there.
Yeah, Loyola avoids the sweep on their end from Glenbrook South, who will finish the season series 2-1 against the Ramblers. So that's something to look out for in the playoffs coming up. Again, hint, hint, nudge, nudge. But this Carmel York game was for the season series as well. The season series was tied 1-1 with Carmel beating York earlier this season. And after a 2-2 first period, as you mentioned, Luke, York just explodes in the second for 5-0. Third period ends up being 2-2 as well. So that second period was all the difference. Ryan DiNapoli, by the way, two more goals in this one, along with Ryan Farley with 2 goals. So for all four of Carmel's goals being scored by Ryan's, but two different guys.
There you go. And then on Sunday, which was Selection Sunday, two teams playing either during or before the midst of that selection show. There was only 13 minutes and 58 seconds left to close out in that New Trier St. Ignatius game. One of the more bizarre things you'll see in a season is where something happens, aka the glass breaks in Chicago back in what, November. So then they have to redo the well, they don't have to redo, they have to continue. So the game was postponed. They played it at the USG Arena, which is the home of the Chicago Steel soon to be. It's a really cool looking rink. Dylan and I got to peep in on the broadcast, but they played 13 minutes and some change of nothing because in the end, nobody scored, but there was a team that won because of Jack Herstritt's goal back in November. So it's a 1-0 win and a very bizarre ninth overall shutout of the season for Max Reed, who ended up stopping 36 shots for the victory on the last game. And this would determine if we needed a game on Monday. Otherwise, we just weren't going to play it because the standings were already set. We needed a Loyola win for that to happen. Otherwise, York and Iggy would play their rescheduled game. Didn't need it in the end. Loyola wins an overtime thriller with yet another consecutive Nick Thomas 2 goal game. And just like that, the regular season here in 2025-2026 regular season is done.
Well, first of all, Luke, just really funny the situation with New Trier and St. Ignatius. I mean, the game got suspended on November 1st, by the way. So being played on February 1st. That's exactly to the date 3 months after they started this game. And I like one thing. We tuned into Butch Connolly's stream, and the teams warm up, and then they go drop the puck at, in the neutral zone, but not at center ice, at the near side left side face-off dot. And I just thought, it's pretty funny to see. And then
Yeah, it was
Maxwell Reed
bizarre.
with 36 saves shutout. I'd like to know how many saves he made in November and how many saves he made in February.
Sam's got to
But
get working on those splits, huh?
yeah, but the final score ends up being 1-0. So New Trier does secure that number 2 seed. Then Loyola fights off a late comeback from Lake Forest. Michael Catalano scores with 8 minutes to go to make it 2-1. Preston Louis scores with 2:48 to go to make it 2-2. But like you said, Nick Thomas with the OT winner. He has been red hot lately. You mentioned he scored 2 goals against Glenbrook South, but had an assist on the other goal by Anthony Donato. So he's putting up the points right now. And Luke, that is a wrap for the regular season. Unfortunately for my OCD, York and St. Ignatius will go in the books as playing one less game than everyone else. But as you pointed out, based on the standings, points, and tiebreakers, whatever outcome that game could have had would not change the seeding. So it does make sense why they would just cancel that.
So before we talk about outside the SHL, we're going to take one last look at the standings here. In the end, Carmel and Stevenson, they were eliminated quite a while ago. Stevenson ends up finishing in that ninth spot, though, with 9 points. Carmel in 10th. And then going top to bottom here, it's the first ever coach's trophy in their school's history for St. Viator, as they end up just with one more point than New Trier had, 19-5-3 for 41. New Trier with 40 in second. Loyola with 39 in third. Boy, did they catch up. York with 37 in fourth. Lake Forest with 32, as well as GBS with 32, but Lake Forest holding the tiebreaker there, which gives them that fifth seed. And then seventh and eighth, St. Ignatius with 28 points. Glenbrook North with 26 points. And if I had to tee you up with one question here, Dylan, what is one portion of the standing where you did not imagine you could see that team there at the start of the season?
Well, Luke, it's got to be St. Viator, and there's no
Yeah.
disrespect to St. Viator, but the one seed in the SHL is very coveted, and it's been belonging to New Trier Green for so many years. And yeah, maybe I could have seen St. Viator in a 2 or 3, but to see them finish the SHL regular season as that number one first place Coach's Trophy champion, um, not necessarily shocked, but definitely unexpected.
Yeah, no, it's well said. I mean, I said start of the year, St. Viator is the team to beat, but still seeing
Yeah,
it happen and seeing the pattern change is another thing. It still throws you off. It threw me off. I was still stunned, especially with the position that New Trier was in to close out that season. And St. Viator was able to get some help from some of their SHL foes as well as finish with that
right.
great record. And that's what gave them that number one spot. So,
Luke, that's a really good point because I remember sitting down and St. Viator had finished their regular season early on because they had to go play in their Great Lakes League. But I remember we were saying, okay, well, New Trier needs 3 points in their last four
four
games. Well, that's
games.
a
Yep.
lock, right? You
Right?
know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and then they didn't. So, St.
Parity.
Viator ends up taking it.
Yeah, pretty bizarre. And that will bring us to the SHL playoffs after we talk about outside the SHL here, brought to you by me. All right, we're all fired up here for the outside the SHL portion. It is playoff time everywhere you look. And I'm going to start with my playoff series of the week from last week. And we actually can't access the scores right now, but I can tell you number 4 Plainfield in the West pulls off a 2-0 sweep of number 5 Hinsdale Central. We'll cover more about the West Cup when we get there, but that was my series of the week. Hoping the games were at least close. Don't really know what happened there. I'm shocked that it was a sweep, but
Luke,
hey,
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but what do you mean we can't access the scores?
I mean, when I tried to look on the website, I could not get them. I might fire up a little game sheet to see if it's different.
Oh, interesting. Oh
Don't
well.
know. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe that is. Oh, there we go. Nope, that's 2022, 2023. Okay, I think if I find it, I'll find it later. But anyway, here is the North Central playoffs right now. So the top 8 teams make the Tier 1 playoffs, which is for the league championship. If you're in the Tier 2 playoffs, you're more just playing consolation. It's split into two pools. So in Pool A, you've got Prep, Chicago North, Rockford, and Evanston. Prep and Chicago North have started 1 and 0, and Rockford and Evanston have each started 0 and 1. The Lightning, though, from Rockford, able to pull out a point in overtime as they lost 5 to 4 to Chicago North. In Pool B, it's Deerfield, BGHW, Notre Dame, and New Trier Blue. Notre Dame juggling two playoffs at one time. We'll talk about that next. But for now, Deerfield with a 4-3 overtime victory against BGHW yesterday. So Deerfield's at the top of that. BGHW is second because Notre Dame and New Trier have not begun playoff play. That they will begin on Thursday. Over to the Catholic League. We've got two series underway, and they were both sweeps. They're actually completed now. Bennett with a 2-0 sweep of Fenwick, outscoring them in those two games 8-3. And then Notre Dame sweeps Brother Rice, which is a shocker, outscoring them 7-3 in those two games as the Dons, who were ranked under Brother Rice in the state playoffs, end up pulling off a sweep in league play. Over to the West Cup. It's all sweeps as well. I don't know what's going on. Number one Maine sweeps number eight Lions. That one you could understand. Plainfield sweeps Hinsdale Central. Wow. Glenbard sweeps DuPage. Okay, I mean, I guess I could get that. And then the Warriors sweep OPRF, which is like, I don't know. But I'm shocked that the lower seed did not win a single game out of that playoff. It's all chalk over there now, which leads us to the West Cup semifinals already that haven't begun yet. It's Maine against Plainfield, 1 versus 4. Glenbard against Warriors, 2 versus 3. And that's where it's really going to spice up, where you're going to get some really close games. And lastly, in the seeding division for the Metro Girls Hockey League, they have not started their playoffs yet. How about Glenbrook in seeding play right now? They are 5-0-0 after tiering, outscoring their opponents 21-9. New Trier, York, Fenwick, and Barrington round out the top five in that top division. And Naper Valley is the lone undefeated team in the lower Founders Division, 5-0-0. And then it's Maine, LFA, Lincoln Way, Chicago Central. So that does it there for my outside the SHL. Now let's look at the playoffs inside the SHL. All right, so it's playoff time. It feels weird to say that, but it's here. It's February 3rd, so it is that time. It's that second month of 2026 where things start to really ramp up. And we have the SHL playoffs that are beginning this week, starting with two games on Thursday. But quick, let's take a look at the bracket. So we talked about those top eight teams. This is how it lines up. Number one, St. Viator is the higher seed against number eight, Glenbrook North. New Trier Green in that unusual two spot will take on St. Ignatius at the seven. Loyola and Glenbrook South 3-6. And those numbers have led to quite interesting series over the last couple of
Hmm.
years. And then 4-5, which is statistically the tightest matchup, one that I can't personally wait for any longer. It's York, the number four, against Lake Forest, the number five. So this is going to be a real exciting opening round of the playoffs. And for those of you that don't know, on Saturday, we will be carrying three of the games for you on the SHL network: St. Viator, GBN, New Trier, St. Ignatius, York, and Lake Forest. And if you want to tune into that Glenbrook South Loyola game, Dylan will be doing that on the other rink, GBS Loyola. So there will be a broadcast available for every single game, which is an exciting thought. So let's look down the line here and just simply talk about each series to get going. We'll talk about the series. I'll talk about where and when games one and two will be. And then if I know of a game three, I'll mention it. I think I only know it for one right now. Dylan might know more than me, though. But let's start. And let's start with the vastest of them all when it comes to the seeding. You've got number one St. Viator, number eight GBN. And this series, it favors St. Viator. There's no denying that, especially when St. Viator did pull off the season sweep of GBN. I think the most impressive part about that sweep, only 2 goals allowed in 3 regular season games. But GBN, I feel like they've been getting better and better, so I wouldn't value them as an 8 seed in this game.
Yeah, well, Luke, the first thing is their first two meetings, a 4-0 win for Viator, a 5-1 win for Viator. Those are both November and earlier. They only met
Yeah.
once since GBN really started to turn it around, and that was a 2-1 win for St. Viator in OT. So, for all intents and purposes, that's a tie game that St. Viator ended up getting the extra point in. So, I mean, you look at this, it's a 1-8 matchup. I don't think it's a gimme for St. Viator. You know,
No,
I don't think they can take GBN lightly. This GBN team has really surprised some people in different ways so far this season. So this is going to be a really interesting matchup. And Luke, I think we said we're making predictions. So I think for each series, uh, um, I'll go first for this one, then you can go second, then next time you can go first. But I am going to say in my prediction that St. Viator wins this series, but I think GBN's going to get one. I think they're going to win in 3 games.
I think in three as well. I mean, you make a really good point. That last game overtime, the previous two in November and October, I looked to the date. That was before any sort of goaltending situation was figured out for Glenbrook North. That's when they were
Mhm.
juggling. Then you've got that 2-1 game where they did have it set. So I think it also could be more interesting than some would imagine. And yes, I think St. Viator should win this series, but yeah, I mean it is not given. So that will be one interesting 1-8 series to start. Game 1 will be 6:20 p.m. and all game ones and game twos will be at Rosemont Ice Arena. So game one, 6:20 p.m. at Rosemont on Thursday. Then they are the opener of a four-game bonanza on Saturday, 3:50 p.m. once again at Rosemont. We'll have that game two for you on SHL Network. Then we start with 2 versus 7. It's New Trier and St. Ignatius. Another fairly low scoring season series where the higher seed did pull off the sweep against the lower seed. But then again, I mean, look at how close some of these games were throughout the season. You got a 2-goal game back in September, 3-goal game route for New Trier October 9th, and then the most recent one completing on February 1st, a 1 to nothing win in New Trier, but in that time that was played in the game in 2026, nobody truly scored. So it's another kind of one of those ones mirroring GBN and St. Viator where it's not a gimme either, but you'd have to say New Trier is the favorite.
Yeah, and just the fact, Luke, that St. Ignatius falls down to being a 7 seed is wild because they're a really good team. Um, and yes, they did get the sweep. New Trier did get the sweep over them this season, as you mentioned, 3-1, 5-2, 1-0. But, you know, St. Ignatius, first of all, they did get a bye in the CCHL, so they will be well rested coming into this one. They are juggling 2 postseasons at once, but. I would say St. Viator is a team that has beaten a lot of teams this year. The only team that they got swept by is New Trier. They had a win over everyone else. Actually, I should correct myself. They did also get swept by Loyola, but I think that they could be due for a win. If they can get a win in game one over New Trier, I think that, you just never know. Or even if they get a win in game two. But going to my prediction, Luke. I am gonna say New Trier is angry that they didn't get the number 1 seed. I think they're gonna come out. They're gonna come out in this one, guns a blazing. Give me New Trier Green to sweep this one in 2 games.
Yeah, we're stealing each other's here, or really, I'm just stealing yours because I'm going New Trier in two as well,
Well, you can
and
go
it.
first on the next two.
There we
Then I
go.
can steal yours.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, I just think, getting to talk to Cheris firsthand, he's been telling me, like even before that Sunday game against Loyola, where they had the lead, eventually lost it. This team's been battling illness, and one of those guys that has been out with illness is Jenner Layden, who has been incredible, especially in big games for New Trier this season. So if he's back for this playoff series, which I would assume such, considering it's nearly 2 weeks since he was out of the lineup, I would imagine he's back. I would imagine he's making impact. I'm not saying the games are going to be a landslide. I think we're going to have probably, a game one
Right.
that is closer than you'd think, maybe even overtime. But I think in that second game, especially if they get their feet on the ground in game one and pull away with the win, I think they can gain even more confidence. And as you mentioned, they're angry. This is not a position that they're usually in. They've got the leadership to take some shovels and dig their way out of it. So, game number one, Thursday, February 5th. It's 8:10 p.m. at Rosemont. Game two on SHL Network, 5:40 p.m. on Saturday. Once again, Rosemont. Game three. This is the only one that I know that there's a game three if needed. It is 9:10 p.m. at Wilmette on the following Wednesday if we need it. But Dylan and I do not predict that time slot being used for a game, but that's why
Luke,
predictions are meant to be met or be broken. So we'll see.
yes. Yes, you're exactly right about that. Also, just to follow up on the first series, Glenbrook North St. Viator Game 3, if necessary, will be played on Monday at also 9:10 p.m. at Mount Prospect Ice Arena if needed. So the other two series, as of the time of this recording, don't have a Game 3 scheduled yet.
And let's talk about the 3 versus 6. This has been an interesting one. Dylan will fill you in all on it about the specific statistics, but what I can tell you just from picking my brain right now is that the 6 seed is usually not an underdog as of late here in this 6-3 series, and that 6 seed is Glenbrook South taking on the 3 seed and well-backed anchor defense in the Loyola Ramblers, and what should be a real fun one that begins on Friday. Of course, the fourth meeting between these two teams this season when you combine the regular season playoffs. We've had some good ones. GBS winning the first one 3-0, then 5-2 in December. But as of most recent, it was Loyola with a 3-1 victory over GBS, and that was just back on Saturday. So we'll see what happens here. This is one where it's actually the 6 seed that won the season series. Can they pull off the playoff series?
Well, Luke, first of all, I'm really excited to call GBS versus Loyola because all three games in the season series I was not available for. So I did not get to call a single one of those, but GBS does take the season series here. Luke, this stat is absurd. The 6 seed has beaten the 3 seed in the SHL quarterfinals for 4 straight years.
Wow. Yeah.
And then
I didn't
if
know it
you
was
go
four
back
straight.
5 years ago, it was COVID. So it has been 6 years in a proper SHL season that the 3 seed moves on to the semifinals, which is incredible. So, Luke, I mean, GBS, this is the exact situation as last season, too. Loyola was the 3 seed, GBS was the 6 seed, and they came out with a win in 3 games in that series. I think this is by far, in my opinion, the most unpredictable, maybe even more so than York Lake Forest. But Luke, I know my prediction, so why don't you go first this time?
Yeah. I mean, my prediction here, Dylan, I know the 6-3 it leans in the way of Glenbrook South. I just think this Loyola team at this moment is just too strong. And I think it's going to be a sensational series, just like we get between the 3-6 and 4-5 every year. I think this is going to be a Rambler series that they take in three. Just with Charlie Trapp, he's going to go all 3 games. That's been known. Blanking GBS last time around as they try to find a way to, try to find their way back in beyond Trapp. I don't know if that's going to take 1 game, 2 games with how good of a goalie he is. So I'd be very interested. And sorry, they did not blank him, but they got a goal with 4:42 left in the third. So it was a 3-1 game. I goofed that. But still, only 1 goal that's not going to get you the win. So they got to find a different way. And until they can that first game, I'm still pretty convinced. I think the Ramblers will take game one. GBS takes game two. But in the end, Ramblers in three is my prediction. Bringing us to yours, Dylan.
Yes, and I was actually going to correct you if you didn't correct yourself
Yeah,
about Charlie Trap blanking, but Thomas Preston actually with a blank of Loyola in their
that's what
first game,
yes,
3
I
nothing.
understand now.
So, you know what, Luke? You can call me biased if you want, but I'm looking at the 6-3 history. I'm looking at the fact that GBS won the season series.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the fact that GBS won the quarterfinals against Loyola last year as the worst seed. Give me GBS to win this one in 3 games, just like they did last year for my first upset seed-wise of the quarterfinals.
And who knows, maybe it could be a consecutive year that happens in the SHL playoffs and then Loyola
Right.
and GBS maybe meet in the state quarterfinals. But yeah,
Well,
that'll do it
I
for the
don't
3
think they
6.
can meet in the state quarterfinals
What
because
did Loyola get? Oh, GBS got
GBS is the 5
5?
seed in state, 6 seed
Oh,
in
okay.
SHL, so that's
They
gonna
could,
shake things up a little bit.
I think they could still meet in the semis if the 5 beats the 1. So yeah, they would not meet in the quarters. I might
If
be
the
wrong.
5 beats the 1, that is the 5. GBS is 5.
Oh, if the 5, yeah, so they would probably have to meet the 1 before they play the 4? I'm losing my mind. I think I'm
The
just
G
losing my
No,
mind.
hold on. Yeah, the only way they would meet in state is in the
Because it's
final.
5 and
They're on
3.
opposite sides of the
Okay,
bracket.
yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes,
correct.
yes. Why did I think I was talking about like I don't even know, man. That's just I don't know. It just sometimes you consume so much hockey that you don't even know what you're talking about. But the final series, as before I do that, actually, let's talk about the game times for this series. It starts on Friday, February 6th, 6 p.m. at Rosemont for game one, and then 7:20 p.m. the following day on Saturday at Rosemont. That game will be on the South Hockey Network, called by Dylan. Our closer on that Saturday is the 4-5 matchup, and let's talk about it right now. York and Lake Forest. I mean, this by some, just considering the numbers, now these two teams have played this season to expectation, how close they played each other in the regular season. This is going to be an exciting, low scoring chess match, as some would predict. Look at the three season meetings between the number five Lake Forest Scouts and the number four York Dukes. Lake Forest took the first one 3-2, then the second one 3-1, and then the only game in 2026, a York 3-0 blank out of Lake Forest. So I'm looking forward to this one. A Lake Forest team that plays really good against good teams, a better record against teams above 500 than teams below 500. They've got a team above 500 by a decent margin here in the Dukes. I'm excited to see how this one pans out, Dylan.
Yeah, this is going to be a really, really intriguing series. I said Loyola GBS might be the most unpredictable series. I think I take that back now that I'm looking at some of these stats. I mean, Lake Forest has had such a great breakout season, and they don't want to lose first round. Even though they're the lower seed, they've made the SHL playoffs as the 8 seed a couple times, as the 7 seed a year or two ago. Now they're a legit seed. They're the 5 seed, and they're facing a team that they've beaten 2 out of 3 times this year. So it's gonna be pure cinema. I cannot wait for this series. Luke, what is your prediction?
Yeah, and I think these are two just very unpredictable teams, to be honest with you. That's what makes it so unpredictable. You got York, who can do anything on any occasion. Lake Forest, more of the same, both with breakout goaltenders. I guess Logan Marsh has been a consistently good goaltender for 2 years now, but Levi Brown on the other end. I mean, I know for one thing it's gonna be low scoring, but who wins? You know what? I'm gonna go on a limb here. This is gonna be my most bizarre prediction. And this is not a diss to the losing team. I think they're going to go far in state. But here in the SHL, something's got to happen that's unusual. And I'm going to say that Lake Forest pulls off a sweep here of York in two really
Wow.
tight, low scoring games. And once again, I don't want to be clipped and put on edits and everything. I have a lot of respect for York. I've watched York beat some of the top teams in the state. But then again, this could be their bump in the road that leads them to a great state run because I see them going, I mean, at least semis in the state. But, not everything's going to line up consistently. And I think this is one of those things where a team's going to get knocked out early in the SHL playoffs, but they're going to go far in the state playoffs. So,
Okay, Luke, I like it. I am going to go the other direction. I'm going to say York has had such a great breakout year themselves, and you look at Lake Forest and say, yeah, they've really taken a great next step this season. But at the end of the day, you have to finish top 4 to be a seeded favorite in the quarterfinals, first round, to have that home ice advantage, whether that be the actual building or the last change for 2 out of 3 games. In this case, at Rosemont, neutral site, almost is kind of a home ice advantage for York, who has played a fair share of games there this season. Um, I think York is having such a great year, first year with Evan Polikitis, and yes, while Lake Forest is the same, one of these teams has to win, one of these teams has to lose. So I'm going to take the York Dukes to win this one. And you know what? I hate to do the Scouts like this, but I am going to say that they sweep them because I think they're going to come out focused. They're going to come out ready to go and keep riding this real hot streak they've been on.
yeah, I mean, this is my most exciting series by a mile. Like,
Yeah.
obviously, Loyola GBS, there's a lot of hype. There's some predictability. This one, we're predicting sweeps in opposite directions. So that's when you
Yeah.
know it's one with just a bunch of question marks arising
Yeah.
around our heads. So I'm pumped. So Friday, February 6th, 7:50 p.m. It's a late one on Friday night, and they will also be the closer on Saturday. So less than a 24-hour turnaround. We'll see how that will affect the lines, the goalie situation. I'm sure both teams will stick with their hot net minders. Of course, Levi Brown, Logan Marsh. But we'll see. 7:30 p.m. on Saturday. That will be game two, and that will be on SHL Network as well. So that does it for our SHL playoffs. But we have to pick a highest scoring series. And from what I know here, Dylan, we're gonna double it, huh? We're gonna double
Yeah,
the
double up
points
the
here.
points. But Luke, before we get into that, why don't you recap our highest scoring game results from last week?
So yeah, I picked York and Carmel. That ended up being the highest scoring one, 13 total goals in a 9-4 final. And which one did you pick again?
I picked GBS GBN. That ended up
GBS
being 4-3.
4-3. So 7 goals. So yeah, I mean not a low scoring one that Dylan picked, but this will bring me a full point, which brings me within half a point now of Dylan. He's got three, I've got 2.5. It's going to be an exciting finish down the home stretch here. This one is worth 2 points if you outright get it right, 1 full point if you tie, and we're going by the highest scoring season or highest scoring series. But Dylan, you get the home advantage here since you are technically on the
Yes.
road as the guest. So we flip things around. So there's 4 series to pick from, and you've got the first pitch. So go ahead.
So, just to be clear, this is the highest scoring first two games. So, if any of the series goes three, the game three does not count in this. Also, I'd love to point out that now that the score is 3-2.5, and we're doubling up the points from here to the rest of the season, that means no matter what, one of us will be the winner and one of us will be the loser. We won't end on a stalemate at the end of the season because there's a half point difference, and we're now the lowest you can get is 1 point. So there you go on that.
Yeah, no weird steak dinner cut in half for each other sitting across the
Yeah.
table. Hi,
And
Max.
perfect segue into us mentioning that Max Anderson is going to give the winner a steak dinner. And by the way, can I just say something?
Go
We've been
ahead.
talking
Fire
about
away.
Max Anderson giving us the steak dinner for a long time now, and he hasn't mentioned anything to us about it. So uh, that just proves that he doesn't watch the podcast. We can say that, but
I'm ashamed. At least he
yeah,
doesn't watch it up to this point. I'll give him that.
right, right. All right. So my highest scoring series, man. I'm gonna take GBS and Loyola. I think
Okay.
that I don't necessarily envision that one being a high series, but I envision all out of all four series that one the least likely to be low scoring, if that makes any sense.
I
So
don't think people realize, like we went through the season series, these games and these matchups have very relatively low scoring games. Like
yes,
this is a tough situation because it's all defense on defense. Like when these
yes,
two teams meet in all 4 matchups, they play their more low scoring games of the season. So I think GBS Loyola, even though Loyola is known for their defense, and of course they've had an explosive offense this season, but I mean, I just don't know where to pick here. And I think I'm gonna go with Iggy Nutrier. I feel like that's the only one left that has some potential of being high scoring, just
hey,
because you look at the
they
past
just
between.
finished a 1-0 game. Be
I
careful.
know, but you got to look past the recent game sometimes, and you got to look to a full game maybe. And I think if these two teams play a full game, we'll see what happens because I just saw a team hang up 5 on Nutrier back on Friday, and I know Nutrier can do that to other teams. So